There are days when faith feels light and days when it feels heavy. Days when prayer comes easily and days when even opening your Bible feels exhausting. And somewhere along the line, many of us were taught explicitly or implicitly that if we are truly walking with God, we should always feel joyful. But what happens when you love God and you still feel deeply sad? Welcome to Profoundly Unfathomable, guys. This is a platform where I try to address more contemporary issues through the lens of Jesus Christ while talking about modern social norms by encouraging questions. Before we continue, I would like to say this clearly and responsibly. This conversation does not replace professional mental health care. If you're experiencing persistent sadness, numbness, or thoughts of harming yourself, please seek support from a licensed mental health professional or a trusted person in your life. Faith and therapy are not enemies. They often work best together. Thank you. I don't know if it's just me or anybody else has noticed the sort of performance nature or performative nature of Christians, in church today and online. I don't know if it's just me, but it feels very performative and it feels void of any real connection or any real humanness. It feels like it's very disconnected from the message that Christianity is even trying to preach in the first place. My experience has been a roller coaster. I grew up Christian. I was born into a Christian home. My parents would take us to church. At some point, I was even part of my church choir and all. But when I got to uni, around maybe 300 or 400 level, when I joined my school's debate team, I started to debate logic a lot, and that sort of made me start to question things and put me in a position where I started to do a lot of research and I just started to poke at a lot of things. Sometimes we'll go for debate rounds and I would argue that there isn't God, and I would come out from those rooms sometimes as the winner, right? And so it transpired, it progressed from just debating to my real life. I started asking questions, I started reading things, I just started going deeper, and the more I did, the more I was pulled away from church. One particular experience though cemented it for me because a friend of mine opened up to me and told me something very private, and I tried to discuss this with my pastor, and he didn't show up for the conversation after inviting me at a particular time and place, and I went there and he wasn't there. That just broke my confidence in the whole system, right? But here's the thing, I wasn't looking at God, I wasn't looking at Jesus for answers. I was holding on to my pastor as the representation of Jesus on earth, and sometimes we get carried away with that. So when my pastor disappointed me, I was really disappointed, and I just stopped going to church from then. And it became worse and worse because the more I read about feminism and some of the conversations I was really interested in, the more I had arguments as to why Christian religion was patriarchal and didn't just favor me, and so I wasn't going to be part of it anymore. So I had all these logical head debates as to why I wasn't going to be Christian, and I publicly would say openly to people that I'm not Christian. And this just continued on, and I continued to research and read and go deeper and deeper. But you find out something, the more you learn about science and you listen to a lot of scientists who have done research that comes close to how life form began on earth, the more you realize that most of them still give credit to some form of supernatural being, some form of unknown, right? I started to read more about something called sacred geometry. And the more you learn about sacred geometry, the more you figure out that most patterns in the universe are very similar. The patterns that exist in our nervous system, look like most of the things that are replicated as patterns in the universe. The way that the web of the universe is formed looks very much like our nervous system, and the uniqueness of the similarity of these things would make you question if all of this just happened by chance. The chances of that everything is a chance is too precise. The precision is too much for everything to have just happened by chance. It seems more like it's leaning towards the fact that there is a creator and somebody actually thought through the creation of everything and has left some design patterns in the creation in his source code, so to speak. And so this makes you just realize that science actually only brings you closer to the understanding of God, and that marveled me. It made me I just you know I was in awe. I was in awe. But that wasn't it though. I think even after all of this, I still couldn't for certain say that I was Christian, because I guess I was waiting for a particular experience, something to convince me or prove to me. And you know how stubborn we can be. But then recently, something happened. Yeah, something happened. I felt like I was out of my body. Yeah, it was a very weird experience, but this experience somehow sealed it for me. It answered all my questions, and I just felt this resolution in my heart that there's a God, and He sent His Son Jesus to die. Because here is why I think Jesus is the perfect being. He's not the symbol or the best ideal person in terms of who to call a king. He didn't come in pride. He didn't come on a golden horse, even though the Bible in Revelation explains how he's going to come back like that. But when he was born very lowly and in a manger and all of these things. And this makes you wonder, like, if this person is a king and is here to save us, why didn't he come in an entourage? Why didn't he enter this place with, like, storm the yard kind of energy? But it only shows you that when we are talking about the richness and the value of kingship and lordship and leadership, it's not necessarily always ascribed to how the leader is presented or how they show up or what they look like physically. It talks about who they are in their spirits and the value and the I'm looking for the word, but the realness of their soul and the message that they carry and how empowering that message is to other people, and how it brings people into the fold, and how this carries our souls, all our souls, regardless of who you are, regardless of the pain that you've been through, or the hurt that you've experienced. Because some of us have been through so much pain in our private lives. We haven't had the avenue to talk about these things with anyone. You just think about that experience, and you, in your mind, you're like, that really happened to me. Like, what? it's such heavy experiences most people have been through in their lives, in their families. Some of us can't even talk about it because there is no avenue due to the construct of how society has been made. A certain class of people are not expected to show up or present in a certain kind of way. If you act too emotional, you lose your respect, and all of that. And you think about these things, and where do I go with this hurt? Where do I go with this pain? And Jesus Christ came the way that he came to relate to you as a regular person, as a man that was born in a manger by a carpenter. How much more humble can that background be? So I think the entirety of him was in essence to relate to exactly who we are. And because the majority of us are not princes and princesses, the majority of us can relate more to Jesus' story. But he comes and he shows you that it doesn't matter what you've been through, or where you were born, or what people said about you, or the hurt that you've been through, or the heaviness in your heart, or the pain that feels like it will never go away. It doesn't matter. All he's asking is, just come and lay your burdens on me. The power, the power I feel in that message is unfathomable. It is so massive. It's so big. It's so profound. It feels everywhere. It takes up every space, and I don't know what you have been through or what you're experiencing or how it feels currently, but I want you to just take some time out and really look into this guy called Jesus. In my opinion, he's a really chill guy, and I think he considered everybody. He thought about everybody and made the claims that he did. And so this is why I'm asking you, because I have experienced Jesus' hand firsthand in my life, and the peace and the calm, in the storm. Life is not automatically going to swap and change, and but you won't feel the pressure as much. You won't feel like you're carrying so much burden on your heart, because somebody is there to hold your hand and walk with you on the stormy water. And yeah, this is my recent experience of God and Jesus, and this is why I decided to put this podcast together and ask more people to think about him more, relatively. Like, think about him closer, think about him like he's a friend. Like, he left you secret letters and messages in the New Testament, which he did, and I've been reading most of that recently, and he's very wise. He's very wise. He talks about, he sends us messages in the most subtle and direct at the same time way, that's like you feel like this person was trying to get to me. This person was particularly trying to get to me. And so this is why I'm saying, try again. If you've tried before and you've given up like me, try again, and you never know what you might find. Jesus is wholesome. He is very wholesome, and I promise you, you will be comforted. Okay, so that's the end of the episode for today. Thank you for listening in. If this felt empowering for you, I would ask you to share with somebody you think it might help. Thank you for trusting this space, with something as tender as your emotions. And hopefully we'll talk about more interesting things in coming episodes. This is Profoundly Unfathomable. Bye guys, take care.